Hello, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Douglas Johnson. I am a certified yoga teacher at the advanced 500-hour level. I'm an ordained minister, a musician and kirtan artist, amongst other things. Today I wanted to share again from A Course in Miracles, but before I do that, I would like to thank my patrons on Patreon. They make this content available without a paywall, which is how I like to work. I don't really like to have a paywall for spiritual content. I prefer the sort of tithing model where people who feel called to help support the work that I do, they can contribute. And so the way to do that, the easiest way to do that is over on Patreon, but you can also Venmo or PayPal me if you'd rather just make a one-time contribution. Okay, so before I get into today's talk, I did want to address why am I sharing multiple sections from A Course in Miracles at this time. And generally all of these talks are driven by my personal work or development, or what I see happening with people that I work with, so clients, students, things of that nature. So this is just driven by my own spirituality, my own journey. Right now, I find certain things challenging. I feel that there's a lot of division in the world, at least in my experience of it right now. So in my part of the world, in my country, if you will. And I find A Course in Miracles takes me to a place that's very different than the standard egoic narrative. What is the standard egoic narrative? I don't know, turn on the news, ask a friend about the state of affairs, and you'll get an earful, and you'll get a viewpoint that probably you agree with, that you're like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense, whatever is going on, whatever someone's take is. I don't really care about, left, right, the political views of different people. I'm on this channel really sharing about spirituality. And so it really doesn't matter what the division comes from, where the division comes from. It's division, regardless. So are we seeing a world divided, or are we seeing a world united? And as I shared in last week's talk from A Course in Miracles, the Course is pretty straightforward in its claims about you are responsible for what you see. You're responsible. And I know that sounds outlandish, it sounds crazy, but this is what spirituality is really about, folks. This is the difference between spirituality and religion. Religion is just a set of beliefs. You just believe those things. Believe whatever you want, oh, I'm a good person, I'm going to heaven. Oh, they're bad, they're going to hell, whatever this is. Real spirituality for me is, it's not quite that easy. It requires the swallowing of some bitter pills or some things that seem like, oh my God, I don't know if I can accept this, right? It's very easy to accept, if I'm good, I'm going to heaven. If I'm bad, I'm going to hell. Again, this actually plays into the egoic framework, the way the ego wants us to see things, at least the kind of traditional conceptions of these things. So scriptures like the Course, they go beyond that. And this is why at a time like this, where I'm feeling myself, my ego and my own sense of division, right, coming in, I turn to A Course in Miracles for guidance. And so I'm just sharing with you passages that I've written down in the past that I find really help take me very quickly out of an egoic perspective, right? Because it's so easy to give into that right now. Again, I'm just speaking personally. Maybe your experience is completely different. That's great if it is. But I find it personally very easy to give into an egoic perspective right now. Okay, so again, I'll read directly from the text of the course. And this is from chapter 30, 5. And it's titled The Only Purpose. So the real world is a state of mind in which the only purpose of the world is seen to be forgiveness. Okay, so that to me is already a really powerful statement. The real world is something in a course that we're working toward seeing, perceiving the real world, rather than the world of illusions, what in yoga might be called Maya. So what is the real world? How do we see reality as it really is? Well, it's telling us here, it's a state of mind. Again, the course, along with other non-dual type perspectives, because the course is a non-dual text, is ultimately everything is mind. I think even in Buddhism, in Zen, I know there's some teachings where they talk about all is mind. Okay, so everything is mind created. I know it seems like there's a world out there, but actually the out there is all in your own mind. So your mind is creating everything. So the real world is a state of mind. It's a state of mind in which the only purpose of the world is seen to be forgiveness. Now, this is interesting because the only purpose of the world is forgiveness. Now, if we love the world as it is, would there be anything to forgive? Think about it. If I was like, oh, everything's going right, everything is great, everything's perfect, everything is working out, do I need to forgive anything? Is there any work to do in a world like that? Okay. So the purpose of the world, the outside world, is actually the practice of forgiveness. Okay. So do you have anything in your life that you want to forgive? Now, maybe I should clarify a little bit about forgiveness for those of you that are not so familiar with the Course. So in A Course in Miracles, true forgiveness is really seeing that you could say we misperceived reality. We didn't see things as they really were. So in a sense, true forgiveness is realizing there's nothing to forgive. Okay, but this is a process. Forgiveness in A Course is not, you're terrible, but because I'm a bigger person, I'm going to forgive you. No, that's not it. True forgiveness is, oh, you could say, I understand. Or things were not the way that I saw, I thought that they were. I was actually confused when I thought that you were guilty or I was guilty. It doesn't really matter. The Course in Miracles is very clear that guilt comes from the ego perspective. It doesn't matter if it's guilt in here or guilt out there. They're both the same thing because according to the Course, we practice what's called projection. So the guilt that I have is so great that I project it out onto the world. So that's very important, right? From this perspective that the purpose of the world is forgiveness because I'm projecting out onto the world my guilt. And that guilt comes from separation from God, from Source, okay? Because of that separation, I feel guilty. I'm afraid, because I'm guilty, that God is going to come with his wrath. Or I'm afraid of other people because, again, how I see other people is how I see myself, is, in a sense, how I see God, right? Is this a loving, forgiving world, or is this a world of fear and guilt and all of these other things, okay? So very, very important to understand that. We're talking about a type of forgiveness that the Course is very much about. And it's not, oh, you're terrible, but I forgive you, okay? So please keep that in mind. Okay, fear is not its goal, for the escape from guilt becomes its aim. So again, if I'm guilty, then I'm afraid, because I'm afraid of retribution, right? Because I'm guilty. So I'm just waiting for the scales of justice to come. And again, I'm talking about this cosmic guilt of the separation from source, the separation from God. But this is everywhere. This is the source of all guilt and all fear in the world. Okay, so again, projection, this happens on a very deep level, and then we project those things onto the world. So again, do you have some fear in your life? Okay, so fear and guilt, from a Course, they go together, because again, if I'm not guilty, I'm not afraid of anything. And again, we're talking spirituality here, folks. We're talking deep spirituality. We're not talking conventional viewpoint. So again, if you are afraid about certain groups in this country or certain movements, certain things going on, I understand from a conventional point of view. Okay, I get it. But I have to say, this is not about a conventional point of view. That's not what deep spirituality like this is about. Okay, and this is why I find it so comforting, because these are challenging times, I think, for everybody. I don't even care what side you are on in selection. There's so much division, and this division comes because both sides are terrified of the other side, okay? And so, again, is this any way to live? Is this any way to find peace, to find joy? I don't think so. So can we find that through politics, through some political movement, through some social movement? I don't know. But when I look at the world, it doesn't seem to be working. I don't see the two sides coming together. I just don't. I don't see unity. I see more and more division, okay? And again, I don't care what side you're on. That's not what I'm interested in here, because you might think, well, if my side won, my side's the side of unity or whatever it is. Well, you might want to check that assumption, to be completely honest with you, okay? Because if you're so interested in unity, then why are you so terrified? What are you terrified of? It's a very interesting thing to explore, okay? When we are talking about unity and inclusion and things like that, but we're seeing division, and we're experiencing division, and we're feeling division. So again, I'm talking spiritually, 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 okay? So let's keep that in mind. We're really talking about deep spirituality, which almost by definition is transcendent of what we are seeing with our senses and our conventional viewpoint. This is to get us out of that viewpoint. And it's, again, I share this to be helpful, not hurtful, not to hurt anyone's feelings or cause more division. This is meant to help us find a way that we can begin to experience unity. And if I didn't find these things helpful, I would not share them. Okay? So let's continue. The value of forgiveness is perceived and takes the place of idols, which are sought no longer, for their gifts are not held dear. So an idol in A Course in Miracles is basically something that you give power to. I know traditionally in the Bible, an idol is like a fake God, but that's essentially what A Course is saying. So an idol could be because a person. This person doesn't love me, therefore I don't feel loved. These people don't respect me, therefore I'm not respected. Again, this is where a course and a lot of manifestation teaching overlap in a very interesting way, because a lot of manifestation teachers, the good ones, they are emphasizing there's nothing to change but self, that you are the operant power and you have to give yourself what you want mentally. You just have to decide it. So you have to decide it. It's so bizarre from a standard perspective, right? That you're like, but no, in order to feel loved, other people need to love me. In order for me to have respect, I need people to tell me that they respect me and treat me with respect. And what the manifestation community says, what the course is saying, is it's not, you've got it backwards. You have to first decide these things, and then they will show up in your reality. So again, very challenging to get your head around. I understand, but that's what makes a lot of these texts and teachings worth exploring, because if you can dig in and explore it, I find there's a lot of value to be had from that. No rules are idly set, and no demands are made of anyone or anything to twist and fit into the dream of fear. So they're talking about, not using idols and not using things as an excuse to be afraid. Again, are you afraid right now? Well, then there might be something for you here, okay, that you're using something to make you afraid. Because again, in last week's share from A Course in Miracles, nothing outside of you can make you feel love or fear. Nothing outside of you can make you feel love or fear. Okay, so again, I know that you want to deny that statement. I do, right? But again, if I actually embrace these concepts and explore them, I find that there's a lot of peace to be had from exploring them. Instead, there is a wish to understand all things created as they really are. So this comes back to the concept of non-duality, and you could say divine source, God, whatever you want to call it. Again, the conception here is not necessarily of an old bearded man who is judging you, but of a source of all of creation. And we are like that source. The only difference is that we made a decision to not experience that. And so we aren't experiencing that. We made a decision to experience being separate, being small, being in a battle with forces that seem to be outside of us and that are different than us, and with others, right? And so what the Course is trying to do is trying to help us take back our power and then decide that we no longer want to experience this. Okay, so this passage is, I think, directly speaking to that to some degree. Let's continue. So, a wish to understand all things as created as they really are. So, how are things created? How does God create things? Perfect. And what God creates is eternal. It's beyond time. Time doesn't change what God creates. So this is often, the analogy that's often used is of a dream. So if imagine that you're a spirit or a soul, and this life you're having right now is essentially a dream where there's time and there's space, and there's separation. Now, according to texts like A Course in Miracles, at one point in time, now remember, time is not real, but for you, it is real. It feels real. It seems like there's a passage of time. But in reality, it's so, again, let's use a sleep analogy. If you're having a dream about a monster chasing you, the reality is you're asleep in bed. So in the dream, I might say, well, soon the monster won't be, when you wake up, the monster will no longer be chasing you. And you could be like, well, when is that going to happen? The monster, it's terrible, all this stuff. And I could say in the dream, and it would be true, I'd be like, well, really, there is no monster. This time isn't real, and there is no monster. You are asleep, safe in your bed. And that's not changed because you're having this nightmare, okay? I get that you're perceiving a monster, and you're perceiving a series of events, a time sequence, right? And when we dream not in real time, right? The dream is much faster. You can have a whole dream in a short amount of time. So it's not like time is elapsing at a certain pace in your dream, okay? So it's helpful to understand these concepts. In reality, you're asleep in bed and time is passing gradually, but in your dream, time is passing. It feels like in real time, but actually it's much faster in reality. So a dream that takes 5 minutes, in your dream, it could have been 20 years or 30 years. So this is very useful for us because what texts like A Course are saying is this is our experience here. Yes, it seems so real, and it seems like time is passing, and it seems like there are people running around, and there are monsters, and there's evildoers, and all this stuff. And it's saying none of that is really real. So if I came to you in the dream and I said the monster's not really real, but I can't make the monster go away unless you wake up. Well, then the question starts to become, well, how do I wake up? And the answer is texts like A Course in Miracles. And what do they teach? They teach us to begin to deny the dream, the reality of the dream, to reaffirm, no, I am safe asleep in my bed. I don't want to give reality to this reality because it's my own mind, it's my own beliefs that are giving it reality, giving it power. Okay, nothing else can give it power but me, because again, that's all that really exists in my experience, is myself. And again, if you're unclear about that, you can rewatch last week's talk. So let's continue. Instead, there is a wish to understand all things created as they really are. So how are they? They're perfect. Everything is perfect, always and forever. That's how God creates. There's no Satan, there's no time, there's no decay or entropy or anything like that in this spiritual reality, okay? And it is recognized that all things must be first forgiven and then understood. Now, I think that's key. I think that's critical. In fact, that one sentence was one of the main things I wanted to share today. All things must first be forgiven and then understood. So, if you are currently living in division, you're living in fear, you are concerned about your well-being or the well-being of your loved ones or others, well, you have to look out there. And I get it. The Course does not say, oh, yeah, the world's really not so scary. It's saying you will perceive it that way. you will 100% perceive it that way. And you have to start denying that. And manifestation says the exact same thing. It's a very hard concept to wrap your head around. And it's a practice. It's a practice like many others I've shared here, where these are things you do throughout the day. Even though I'm a yoga teacher and I do teach specific practices, that are done, like yoga postures and yoga breathing and stuff like that, and that stuff is useful. Personally, I'm much more interested in practices that you do constantly, that involve how you live your life, because these, I think, are the most transformative. I mean, how many hours a day can you spend doing yoga postures, doing yoga breathing? I mean, 3, 4, 5, 6, but you can't spend your whole day doing that. But these perspective practices, you can do them all the time. Anytime a thought enters your head, you can ask yourself, is this a love thought or a fear thought? Is this division or unity? Okay? So this particular sentence, and I'm going to read it for you again. And it is recognized that all things must be first forgiven and then understood. First forgiven. Now again, Course in Miracles is not saying, oh, you're a terrible father, but I forgive you, Dad. No. It's saying that your perspective that your father is terrible is your confusion and your creation. You turned your father into a terrible father. You can just as easily turn him into a great father. It's all perspective. It's all the way that you are seeing things, okay? And forgiving, so again, letting go of the judgments. Now, you don't necessarily have to say, oh, my father's great, if you don't believe that. But letting go of the judgment that my father is terrible, or my father was terrible, or I'm angry at my father because he didn't love me the way I wanted. I'll tell you a little secret, everybody, and maybe you already know this, but I think almost no one's parents loved them the way that they wanted to be loved. Not perfectly, because we as human beings, we're not perfect. Not on this perspective, not from this egoic perspective. So our parents do the best that they can, and they will fall short because we are wanting and needing things that they, to the best of their ability, they still will not be able to provide us, because they're not mind readers and they're not perfect. They're human as well. So again, this idea that my parents did this or that to me, it's really not getting you anywhere. So letting go of that, forgiving that, and again, true forgiveness means seeing that there's really nothing to forgive, that your parents did the best that they possibly could, and they probably loved you more than anything in the world. And despite that, they were not able to give you the love that you wanted, not perfectly. And again, this is, from a spiritual perspective, something we need to give ourselves. Ultimately, we need to give ourselves the love. So in a sense, it may be perfect that they can't give it to us, because then we have to learn how to give it to ourselves. So the world must first be forgiven and then understood. And I think the understanding part is huge, but it comes only with that letting go of that gripping in the mind. So on a personal basis, who are you judging right now? Who are you seeing as the enemy? Who are you pointing the finger at for your others' suffering and misery? Could you find a way to forgive these people and the world? One of my teachers once said that eventually you have to forgive the whole world. The whole world. That includes your teachers, right? Your spiritual teachers, your guru, your spouse, your children, your parents, just everyone and everything ultimately needs to be forgiven. And once it's been forgiven for not being perfect, for not being what you wanted or needed, then you can begin to understand the world and you can begin to see the world as it really is, which is what this passage in the course is all about, trying to begin to see the real world. All right, everyone. So as usual, I hope this was helpful for you. That's the intention here. Please like and subscribe, share, comment. If you're on YouTube, all those things do help. And if you'd like to go a little bit above and beyond that and help financially so I can continue doing this, then please check out the links below and check out the Patreon page. Right now, I don't provide anything extra because, again, I just don't like paywalls. One day that might change. It might have to change. I don't know. But for now, I have enough people who are willing to support the work I do. And a great way of thinking about that is paying it forward. You may only watch one video a month, but perhaps you do find what I provide really valuable for people and you want it available for others. And so you have the opportunity to pay it forward there. All right, everyone. Until next time, namaste and have a beautiful, beautiful day.